Hello, 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 hello. Let me check the microphone. Check, 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 check. You know why I'm doing that voice? Why does my camera look so foggy? My eye's still fucking red. Why does it looks kind of crazy, like those lines behind me? Whatever. Either way, I feel like being off camera. I don't look beautiful. I don't look beautiful. Um, I want to share the screen, but I need to actually hide your name. I'm a. Okay. Share the screen, sir. Can I compete with my former self of yesterday? This is the question everyone is wondering. By everyone, I mean me and my cats. But let's just say that I was special yesterday. I was special. I had one of my better days in a while. So much that I said, let's just do 2 days in a row because my live client canceled. So let's try. It's my first one today. So you have an interesting rising moon. The moon was rising in Virgo, squaring the sun. So that's exact, 1 degree away. 2 Gemini, 3 Virgo. So that interesting. Whoa, no way. They're both 3.13. So the moon was exactly rising. Holy fuck. Excuse my language, but I only say that word when I mean it. That's crazy. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so that is an amazing placement. Um, so when you have moon, the amount of artists that have moon rising, let me tell you, it's a lot. Um, People with moon rising have this ability to just to just speak to, like their emotions are so prominent in their personality. And it's one of my favorite placements because, your moon is ultimately what's hidden, right? Your moon is what's hidden. And your rising is what's shown, right? Your rising is your personality. If we're talking about you are an egg, the rising is the the shell, the white is the yolk, the white is the sun, excuse me, and the yolk is the moon, what's hidden. So one of the things me and my system that I created, invented myself, that I talk about is how do these three relate to each other? Oftentimes, well, I guess, it happens. I have people who have a rising, let's say they have Leo rising and a Pisces moon, or a Pisces rising and a Leo moon, right? Um, Someone with like a very, very chill, like Taurus rising and like a Aries moon. I think I had that yesterday, right? That is so different, right? So someone like that, what they're like when people meet that person, they're expecting this very chill, laid back energy type person, and then they're surprised when, or someone that has like a Leo rising, their Scorpio moon. It's like they're expecting like this outgoing person to kind of be like that in their core, but then they have that real deep scorpionic, you know, inside, right? So when you have your moon with your ascendant, it literally is, what you see is what you get. You wear your emotions on your sleeve. And also you can learn a lot about your emotions by your behavior, right? So there's a huge interplay between the two which makes it so you're able to really express your emotions and your emotion. It creates a very emotionally expressive person, right? Um, so when it's Virgo, right? Virgo, Virgo is the sign of purity. I think of a white dove is what I've always imagined with Virgo. I think it's the most misunderstood sign with Aquarius. Obviously, Aquarius is there, but like I think Virgo has something to be said, right? Now, with the moon rising, someone like that is not going to hide their true feelings, right? Um, and they'll also have a lot of public appeal, and it's very good for popularity. Um, but it's hard to hide the emotion, right? Um, and it it kind of makes it so people tend to feel like you're this very real person, someone who can express themselves and who can express their emotions in a way that's very honest, um, which enables you to form very close and authentic emotional bonds, right? People see you, you are on an internal level what you appear to be. The way you look at yourself in the mirror right now. That is literally who you are. Your moon is who you are. That is your emotional nature. It's a perfect setup, a perfect link. I mean, so there's a maternal nature also with this, right? And it's good. It's also very empathetic, very kind. Um, but it's not like too kind where you're giving too much of yourself to allow people to take advantage of you. It's not that. Um, Now, one thing to watch out for with that is to not be too emotionally demanding of others, right? Because not everyone can sustain your level of emotional support, right? That's the thing. So when we add to this, we got Black and Lilith in that same area, and then we got the South Nudie. Interesting. But when we really think, okay, the Sun in Gem, Moon and Ascendant together on one team in Virgo, they in an exact square, it really does bring up certain conflicts. But let's talk a little bit about your Virgo side, right? Um, you could have experienced your mother as critical. However, because of the very positive aspects, um, to the moon, beside, there's this opposition of Mars, the square with the sun, but that's then all the outer planets trine with Uranus, Neptune, Saturn. We're talking it's not something that like I would I think would speak to like a bad like a bad relationship. Most like this is the thing though. Sun square moon, I have that, by the way. um I'd say the majority of people who I clients and people I've met who have that have divorced parents or parents who just have a big disagreement on how to raise you, or like there's just like a big um there's a big deficit in terms of who they most likely were as people. So what happens is that people will have these two very conflicting sides to them. And I always say this in so many of my readings. I say it's all about how do you feed both mouths. Um, so let's just go back to my page. So the Gemini, right? The Gemini is a free-flowing energy, right? I don't need to tell you much about your sun sign. It is conjunct Juno, so that adds like a very soothing element to it, a very loving, nurturing element. But the Gemini part of you is about curiosity. I'm not going to lay out all of, I'm not here. I'm not a sun sign astrologer, but what I'll say is that it's an air and it's mutable, and it is very, very much about go with the flow and trial and error and experience. Gemini, unlike while Gemini likes to just go and worry about it later, experience, curious. Um, Virgo is a lot more calculated. Even though it's mutable Earth, Virgo is an energy that can be that, this is why Virgo, this is the thing about Virgo. Virgo needs to release itself. I might actually feel myself saying this. So the thing about Virgo is that Virgo needs to release itself. That's why the reason Virgo is such a misunderstood sign. To me, it's like Aquarius and Virgo. And the reason is that it needs to release itself from that perfectionism, right? When it is able to do that, it's a mutable, meaning go with the flow, earth sign, right? But when it's not able to do that, when it's so aiming for that pure white color all the time, then it gets stuck. And that's when the OCD, the overly worrying, all these things that we talk about when we talk about low vibe Virgo, just being too structured, allowing, allowing these little like worries to take away from the essence and the oneness of all that is. But the fact that it's the opposite sign of Pisces shows the mystical energy of Virgo, right? It shows that there is more to Virgo. The thing is, Virgos need to learn how to let go of that need for 100. And if, each day is on a scale of 0 to 100, it's okay. Like the days you have 40, the days you have 70, like being okay with that on those days, right? Having a sense of humor about your failures. That is high vibe Virgo, because you're still going to be very, very good, right? But not Virgo is its own worst enemy. And I just wanted to have that. I don't know if I'll post it, but we'll see. But you get the point, right? Virgo is its own worst enemy. So if there were messages early on, if there were messages early on that reinforced that, right? That if there are messages early on that reinforced this kind of like perfectionism, from the parents, from the family, whatever, then they, sometimes what happens to Virgos is they start to take their own value from, how good am I? How much, how good am I at achieving X, Y, or Z, as opposed to being realistic about it. And then they become very, very hard themselves. And that's the thing with Virgo, right? Like self-criticism. And then that leads to self-sabotage. So Virgos, they want to feel useful. So Virgo, it wants to, like, the best energy of Virgo is someone who's still very, very organized, who still understands the steps that it takes to get the job done, but they know that the perfection is just a construct, and it's an idealistic construct of the mind that's impossible to get to, and that ultimately is not efficient. They're all about efficiency, and it's not efficient because it leads to a combustion, because you're never going to get to 100, and it's just about learning to be okay with and even if there's a week where you're just at a 40, just knowing that you will have the hundreds, the 90s, the 80s, just life flows up and down. And sometimes for Virgo, it's very hard to get that. So learning that is the biggest thing for Virgo. And like I always say, there's always, like I can't think of how many times I've said, that every single day there is a million reasons to be anxious. There's a million, you can find something every single day to allow you to worry, to allow you to look at the future in a pessimistic way, even allow you to look at the past in a pessimistic way. You know, so that's why Virgo needs to borrow from Pisces, its opposite sign, because Pisces is sometimes too much dreamy, too much going with like the flow, and too much yeah, it'll get figured out. It'll get figured out. Not really looking at details, but it's that right balance between understanding the steps that it takes to get to to your outcome that you want, but then also just trusting God, trusting the universe, trusting that things will work out. That's the essence of Pisces, the high mystical energy, the most creative and most mystical sign. Well, creative is up for debate, but it is the last sign, right? So it's a mix of all the other ones. So it's a sign of oneness, right? Of all 11 signs coming together and meeting for the 12th. So when Virgo can do that, Virgo can become like a earth version of Pisces. If Pisces is cosmic magic, Virgo is earth magic. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So it's really important for Virgos to understand that they are magical beings. And they just need to get out of their own head. And the fact that you have Black Moon Lilith in that same, area is showing that that very thing I was just talking about, that perfectionism and the potential to if you're critical of yourself, to project that self-criticism onto others, that is the biggest difficulty, right? So very, very key for Virgo to understand that, right? Sense of humor is the biggest thing. So the fact that there's Gemini and Virgo is actually interesting, because there'd probably be times in your life where you would be a lot more, kind of just like going with the flow, and then times where, Virgo moon, sometimes they intellectualize emotions too much, right? And emotions are energies, right? So it's like we cannot intellectualize emotions. God, that I just showed my camera. That looks so cool. Those lights. I don't know what's happening, but I don't see them behind me, but it looks like lasers from Star Wars. Ooh, ooh, ooh. But yeah, so they intellectualize emotion, right? And basically, yeah, they can do that. And not it's Mercury ruled moon, right? So the moon wants to be able to feel the energy and release it, release the sadness, release whatever. Sometimes Virgos, they can have a fear of really facing their emotions. So that's another really important thing. Let me move this closer. So yeah. I was just talking to a Virgo moon client the other day, and yeah, I mean, obviously order is really important. Having things done a certain way is very important. But what can happen that can be annoying for some Virgo moons is that it's that very thing. I think that's but like, let me tell you how much I love Virgos. My best friend's a Virgo. My mom's a Virgo. So it's like one of my, obviously it's a sign that I trust deeply, right? Because I'm a very loyal person, and I find that a lot of Virgos are some of the realest people. Pure earth souls. Not all of them, but that goes for every sign, right? Um, but another thing about Virgo moon is there's a strong link between your emotions and your body, right? So it's really important to understand, like doing something like somatic, like some kind of like yoga, meditation, stuff like that's really strong for Virgo. And Virgos are happy, right? So your moon sign is like how you are, how you're happy, how you're content with your life, blah blah blah. It's how you feel secure. So Virgo moons, to feel secure, they want things to be lined up a certain way. So in terms of, I always talk romantic stuff. I know I have your compatibility coming up. I'll do that when I feel up for it, but it's coming up. But those readings are a little bit different. I have to really, really be in the zone for that. which I don't like. I hate making promises. But I would imagine it'd probably get done this weekend. Although I do have, we'll see. It'll be done very soon. Um, but yeah. Anyways, as I was saying, there is definitely a Virgo moon needs to have, and I guess since you're having compatibility, I won't like stay too long on the romantic part, because that's something I talk about regardless in the compatibility. But Virgo moons, I guess what I would say is that whether it's friends, whether it's with partners, they need people who are from like who are just that they can be sure of, who have a similar standard. Because there is a method to the madness of Virgo, right? There is like, and I honestly I'm kind of fucking Virgo. Excuse my language. Um, like I, my mom's super Virgo, and like I have no Virgo in my chart. I mean, my ascendant's the last 2 degrees of Leo, so yeah, but no Virgo. But like I what like cleanliness, like I'm the same way. Organization. So I'm like, and maybe I took these things from my mom, right? But I know what it's like because I'm just as organized as my mom, and she's Virgo. I'm maybe more organized actually. Um, yeah. But just like loving things in order, and I agree, like Virgo loves beauty, it loves purity. So and Virgo, like love language is like, through consistency, through action, through like Virgos. That's the one thing I love about Virgos, that they don't talk to, they walk the walk, and they notice everything. So observant. Virgo ascendants, so observant. Like there are people who are like strategists, right? Like they will like see everything, and then like just they might not act like right away, but like they see it. They definitely see it. And they're yeah. And then the fact that it's first house moon is it definitely makes one very adaptable also. Um, but there's this need to feel like your life is moving forward, right? So that kind of lines up with the Gemini. But the big square between the two is that, like I was saying, like that gap between that free flowing Gemini craziness and then that Virgo need for order, and just making sure that you're finding a way to feed. Oh my God, what was that? I just got scared. Focus. Weird. Yeah, so just making sure that you're good in that area, and that maybe it's something along the lines of having like a free flowing life, but then also um oh, I want to say, yeah, so it's like having like a free flowing life, but also having like all of like everything kind of balanced out in a certain way, like not that wasn't the right way of saying that. Having everything sort of the foundations of your life of your life solid. I'm gonna send a screenshot of your chart over to my email. I just started doing this yesterday. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun. It's fun. No, I like having it. Sometimes when I'm working, I like to like turn the camera off and like walk around my room, my my area. I've always been someone who learns a lot better in movement. Okay. I might as well text you, message you also. Wait, what am I doing? Oh yeah. Um, there you are. Oh, you sent me a voice message. Hey, your voice message. Well, I'm in the middle of a reading right now, so I can't listen to it. And somehow I only get a lot of my messages on my iPad, which is really annoying. But I'm literally, you're gonna see this on your video. I just want to tell you that it's yours is getting done now, and then yeah, and the other one will be, very soon, and then the compatibility is it's very soon as well. Whenever compatibility, I have to be in that mode, and I also do a little bit of research for that one too. But yeah, so just letting you know, yours is first. Okay, cool. So now you're on my. You just make sure that you are on my main folder. Yep, you are. Okay, so go to your email. Doesn't that look cool? Using my mom's old iPad. But this is such a cool use for it. Oh wait, there. That's okay. Perfect. All right. Anyways, let's go share screen. That video. Walk around a little bit. Anyways, so as I continue to look at the chart, the houses of 10 and 1 are what's activated through this Virgo sun and moon. And I think that obviously when you have a 10th house sun, your dharma in this lifetime is very, very important. No, Mika. And your sun is conjunct the midheaven also, you know, like 5.5 degrees away. So people who have that, sometimes they come from quite, they're a lot of times their dad was very successful, not always. Um, what I've noticed about that with clients is that sometimes, like I've had like, royalty that's come to me, or like very, very successful, or people from like really rich backgrounds who've had this. But then I've also had it where it wasn't like that at all, but it was more around, um, but like just their career being such a big part of their life. But the fact that the 10th house, right, the house of Dharma, and the first house, the house of self actualization, I guess you could say, are your sun and your moon. It's just really showing, and when we align it with your north node, which is in Pisces, it's very interesting, right? Um, Pisces seventh house. So, yeah, I'm actually gonna get into that a little bit later, because that wasn't what I was expecting. Because there is a whole Pisces part, seventh house, Mars ascendant, and then yeah, but just like, so that's a big part of your chart, is this very active part, right? Um, this 10th house sun people, oh yeah, what I didn't finish saying was that there's just like this big um pull towards one's career, and towards one's outer life accomplishments, right? Sometimes people with 10th house suns, they have to watch out to not be overly obsessed, right? And with the Black moon Lilith in Virgo, which is like, the lower, I think of that as like the lower the lower potential. And if you like kind of follow the Black Moon Lilith, it's kind of like your self-defeating behavior. I think it would also, besides being like potentially overly critical of others and overly perfectionist of self and others, um, it could also just be like with the 10th house sun and, being overly career oriented. And this is a problem if that's the case, because you have your North Node in Pisces. So people with South Node in Virgo, North Node in Pisces, especially your chart, right? Well, first of all, it's 7th house. So, some type of a spiritual relationship, um, or just relationships that have like a real spiritual kind of like, and by spiritual, I don't mean meditating together or anything like that. I just mean like very, very like, like love, romantic love can be your not escape, wrong word. It can be your kind of doorway to higher consciousness and to your North Node. But when your South Node is um in Virgo like that, right? South Node represents your karmic tendency, and we have I see this. I know exactly what this is. So the fact that this so when I look very, very heavily at squares to the node. Those are known as skipped karmic steps, right? So when I see that, I say, okay, so you have your Virgo South Node, right? So the karmic tendency, first house, it's very much about very, very much about the material realm. And there's been an imbalance karmically between the material and the spiritual. And there's been a, you know, a kind of a tendency to move too far in that direction of kind of what I was saying earlier, right? Like there's always like there's we can find reasons like many reasons every single day to to be anxious or to worry about something that takes us out the of the I guess the highest energy, right? So it's really important. It's really important as a Virgo South Node to understand that, and to understand that because you have Mercury squaring the nodes, that there's this karma where there's some type of self-limiting belief, some type of introject, right? Something of that sort, some way of thinking, right? Some way of processing thoughts that has held you back, right? It has held you back in different past lives. And when the South Node is in Virgo and you have that is like a surefire sign to me that there's something there around um there's something there around being too much in the physical, right? So it's like the person in this lifetime who just is completely caught up in just obsessing with their work, and there's nothing wrong with that, obviously. I love my work, but um the goal at the end of the day is to take the South Node, right, and use its power to get you to your North Node. So in this case, the way to do that with Virgo to Pisces is to really, really be able to use the very practical side, the very, ability, like the real ability that Virgo energy has to understand the steps that it takes to meet a certain goal, to take that and apply it, right? apply it to a more spiritual goal, but it's not necessarily like you're meant to be a monk or something like that. More so that there's something there around, a need to align yourself with oneness, right? With oneness in this lifetime. So that's really what's called the call to action is really about that. Um, so there's a lot, and we'll get more into that in a little bit about the square, but I just kind of want to touch on that because when the south node's in the first, right, and the north node's in the seventh, there can be some type of issue when it comes to compromise. Um, I like to give examples from like modern times. So if there's like the person who is so kind of obsessed, with their career, their achievements in that sense, they might really, really, I guess, miss out when it comes to sorry, I lost my train of thought. They might like someone who's like very, very obsessed with I guess like their like it's not just their career, but like just like with the full manifestation of their personal goals, right? Um, when that's the case, what can happen is that it can it can make it so when obviously relationships are very important, right? Relationships are very, very one of the most important parts of life. So what can happen is that they can deem that their worldly quest is way, way more important. Now, it could have been, and that could have been very rooted in the reality. But what happens, with the South Node in the seventh, is that there is a need in this lifetime to learn to be in very, very karmic relationships in this case, um, and to sort of let go. It's not really necessarily like letting, like there's nothing here that's saying like you need to let go of success. Like that's not what it is, right? Obviously. um and I also have the same south node and north node as you, just so you know, right? But it's just about like being able to compromise, right? Being able to say, okay, like I understand the importance um of my goals and what I'm here to do, but maybe doing it in a way that's more collaborative, right? And if that's something that you've been doing, then absolutely brilliant. That's amazing. um that's the best thing. But when I think about like like the fact that the Mercury, which is the mind, right? Mercury is our mind, that is square the nodes. Then I instantly think, okay, there's some carried over way of thinking. um Something about usually it's about the self in Virgo, right? Like it could be carried over perfectionism, it could be carried over um like some cognitive tendency. Like there's so many potentials. It's endless with the potentials. um but the point is that there's always, the point is that the movement from Virgo to Pisces, from a south node to a north node sense, is the movement. It's literally um, the movement from being too invested in the day-to-day life, that might not have that same depth. So when I talk about being stuck in the south node, right, it's a concept that I started talking on my Instagram. It's very easy to be stuck in your south node, right? This, like, being stuck in your south node is very easy, right? And what happens when, like, so we each have a different version of that, but usually the universe will block us in certain ways when we're stuck in our south node, right? And in your case, that the way that might look might be, not like kind of going against the whole compromise, and the whole, making more, like first house south nodes are so good when it comes to being like they're naturally very adventurous spirits. So, but it's like, there's been a lot of been there, done that in past lives, right? So it's like, as souls, we're looking for new areas of experience, right? Um, so if stuck in the south node for Virgo could be someone who, like what can happen is that, different, like someone could get sick, someone could, and once again, it always comes down to the psychosomatic stuff, right? But yeah, there's really infinite ways that can look, but um, the general feeling of someone stuck in their south node is just like ugh, like loss of passion with life, and just kind of a feeling of just like, what am I doing? Um, days can feel repetitive, and just like they're not, just like that feeling of real growth. Like, I am doing this. Like, I'm, there's a certain feeling when we're really moving in that true, pure, most correct direction, right? It's hard to explain in words, but there's a very, very tangible feeling. And a lot of times, like, when you do have a first house south node, sometimes there can be something around the ego, right? So the universe might block some of that in certain ways. Um, I always talk about how first house south node, what, I've actually seen that quite a bit, is that the universe can block, just make it more difficult to succeed in certain ways. And especially if any endeavors are ego based, the universe will block them, you know. So Pisces, it's really, and so there's always ways that you can kind of get around things, right? But in this sense, it's really about, guys, get out of here. Mika, Esme, get out. Get out, Mika. Out. Yeah. So yeah, like basically moving towards that, it's you really know it internally. If I ask you right now, do you feel like you're moving towards your north node, towards Pisces? Like, if your life is becoming more spiritual, if you're feeling a sense, a more of a closeness with God, um, more connected spiritually, and where you're not, where you're looking more. Here's another big concept: the physical value versus the metaphysical value, right? Pisces is all about the metaphysical value that you give. And also, one other thing is that a seventh house Pisces, yeah, there's that relationship orientation, but there's also seventh house rules, partnerships of all sorts, one-on-one partnerships, but also clients. If you were, like, let's say you're doing something like I was doing, right? So, yeah, having like spiritual clients would be one of the best ways for this. But the square with Mercury, kind of going there, there's lots of unresolved issues around the mental life of the individual, right? And a lot, it could be like I said, like introjects. It could also just be like overly rigid thinking, and like just like it could also just be lots of internalized messages that are like very critical of the self that kind of undermine the strength of the personality. Whether it's like internalized guilt or shame, self-hate, like things that are very unconscious. It's like imagine the person from past life to past life, they have this unconscious messaging of like, I don't deserve success, or I don't deserve to be happy, right? It's not like you're saying, so it's not like someone's saying that, but it can still be there. Um, so there can also be some kind of communication issue, right? Like a lot of trouble trusting other people's opinions. And what could have happened in past life is that there could have been something like some lies or different conflicting views um towards like the nature of truth that one may have had in past lives, may have had like very profound consequences. That could be some past life trauma there, right? So there's a lot. Um, so I think with that, it's just really important to really get within the mind and to really feel the emotions and really, really, the more, just being very aware. And as a Virgo moon, it's not always, like I said, the tendency to intellectualize emotions there. Okay, so the Mercury itself is over there it's conjunct Chiron. So it's in Chiron's in Gemini. They're both in Gemini. So obviously a Mercury in Gemini is a very strong placement. It is opposite Saturn though, and opposite Uranus, which is so many of my clients have this. I probably could have guessed your Chiron sign. But basically like the amount of my clients that have this Chiron in Gemini, right? And so you're very intelligent. I mean, like and you have a real amazing way, when it comes to putting people at ease. But what's happening, right, with with the fact that so Chiron with Mercury, and then the fact that Mercury is opposite Saturn, um opposite Uranus, and is it 24? Yeah. Um, so when you have the opposition with a Uranus, it's kind of like I always imagine like my clients is like kids who just were like ahead of their time, maybe like they had like very inventive ideas, but like they were a little bit like, a little bit eccentric or just like not the norm. So then the opposition with Saturn could just speak to someone who, you know, may have received messages early on that kind of mimic that past life like difficulties, right? Maybe not feeling like they're getting messages that they're not as intelligent as they really are, or being made to feel that way, right? So one has to combat that, right? One has to combat that. And you know with Mercury and Chiron, it so Chiron and Gemini people, like they a lot of times internalize this feeling that they aren't smart, or that there's something wrong with their way of thinking, and they have to find, kind of heal themselves in that way, by learning to truly value their way of thinking about the world. And sometimes it takes time, but the fact that you have Jupiter in the ninth house, the house of truth, of beliefs, that shows that you're a natural truth seeker, that you're someone who is very, 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 like, has this big, amazing perspective. You're a natural teacher when it comes to truth. And as a Virgo or Virgo moon, like, and Gemini sun, very curious but also very detailed, right? So um the Virgo could speak to like a certain perfectionism, but yeah, usually it could have been like early childhood education, and just, just like pain early on when it came to communication, and um just believing that something was wrong with the way that you communicated, the way that you thought, something like that, but also, Jupiter with Chiron is the healer. It's the person who knows what to say, when to talk, when not to talk, how to talk, you know how to really put someone at ease. A lot of times they have a very, very, very common for counselors, teachers to have that, and they can put people at ease with their ability to communicate. So people will tend to come to them. They have a very warm energy, and the fact that Juno is with your sun, adds, continues with that nurturing energy, right? um so the fact that it's opposite, so the Saturn one, Mercury opposite Saturn can also speak to some potential for, for depressive thoughts or melancholic thoughts at times. It is an opposition, so, there is, it could have been that, like, the father was very critical and judging, um or both parents, and people with this tend to be quite shy, because of early childhood experiences. They tend to kind of like doubt themselves, and then, towards the Saturn return, they really, really kind of, you know grow into themselves, right? And they start, everything gets easier after that, and then you are very smart. Like, you do have like very good signatures of intelligence. You have the third house Pluto too, right? That third house Pluto people have this like real like intensity when it comes to researching, when it comes to like really going and getting the information. They have that. So, um, anything that you find interesting, and that you have a passion about, even though you lack fire in your chart. So lacking fire can make that very thing difficult. That's actually a little bit, I'm curious how that is. But yeah, when you lack fire, there can be, difficulty with that very thing. Self-starting passion. Um, so, you have so much earth. So like once you really, really get, going at something, you have that real ability to kind of follow through, but it's just, like being able to do the starting part, which can be hard. Um, but yeah, like with the Chiron, yeah. So there can be like that, like, just like difficult childhood stuff, when it comes to restriction, or, like just having like kind of like trouble with authority like early on, right? And a lot of times with something like this, I could see like a, absent or just overly strict father, or, or both parents, or yeah. um and then sometimes people, like what I've seen is like repeating this pattern until all that healing is completed, repeating that pattern with, adult, partners, right? Attracting partners who kind of repeat this childhood pattern. So it's all about, like, facing the emotional pain in a very disciplined manner, right? And then through that, you find your own inner healer. And, like I was saying with the Uranus one, sometimes people with that, like, they can thrust their original thoughts, and their way of thinking is very original, very individualistic, outside the box. But sometimes they can kind of throw these, can be like very, very rebellious too when it comes to ideas, and they can sometimes throw that and just like defend their truth, at all costs, and get into like very intense arguments. And sometimes like had issues like, you know, sometimes like, yeah, issues with, well, with this one, you do have the Virgo energy, which is definitely good for listening, but sometimes this, it's like it can just be like a lot of energy, a lot of mental energy, where it can be difficult to concentrate. And difficulty also like seeing other people's point of view. Um, so yeah, all those things could have led to some kind of issues with communication. But like, the fact that Mercury and Chiron are conjunct in the 10th, I believe that we all have different healing journeys, so that as healers, whether we do that for work or not, we're able to kind of teach these exact things that we learn, So, it could be someone, you could be someone who, who heals people through communication, or who helps people, gain confidence in their ability to kind of have their voice, right? Um, so, Venus is there opposite Uranus and Saturn also. It's in Cancer retrograde. And then Mars is on the descendant in Pisces, 0 degrees. Your descendant's on Fomalhaut. Wow. So, so yeah, so Chiron is the midpoint um between Venus and Mercury. Chiron is right in the middle, midpoint. And um what that can do is that it just makes the healer archetype like super super important in your chart. And the fact that Chiron in the 10th house by itself, like just very basic, it's like someone who has to kind of like, who's here to really heal their public persona, and their ability to kind of put themselves out there in the public. Like that's like, a big area of healing, you know um so yeah. And obviously with the sun in the 10th house, your career and your dharma is extremely important to you, right? So with Venus in the 11th, 0 degrees retrograde in Cancer. One thing about Venus retrograde is that there can sometimes be too much of an obsession with love as kind of the be all save all for people. So they really have to learn to, um, you know, they have to really learn to, I guess, how do you say it? To not be like that. That's not a good explanation, but you know, they have to learn to really like Venus is ultimately about self-love, right? So sometimes Venus retrograde people can have difficulty when it comes to like truly freely expressing their affection for other people. Um, and they can like really look at their life based, like how good they're doing based on the answer to the question, how much am I loved, or um how much am I loved, or how much am I like deprived of love, I guess. So yeah, it can just karmically there's usually like memories of painful past life relationships. Um and it really has to do with, like I said, with self-love. Um but people, sometimes there can be some self-sabotage where they cut themselves away from experiencing like the richness of love because of like this fear deep inside the soul that they'll be hurt. And I think of the retrograde energy as either having like under or overdone, whatever is linked to that energy, right? So, with the retrograde Venus, I would, I automatically think that, and it's 0 degrees, so that's kind of like a new, a new karmic journey in this respect. So it's kind of like the Fool card in tarot. Um, but yeah, it's an exact opposition with Uranus. So Venus, Uranus. So when we talk about your love energy in general, right, which I said I would get more into later, um, obviously the Virgo, I said like about like what Virgo energy needs, but you know, Gemini obviously needs that, you know, that fun, that movement. But then when we have, you know, Venus in Cancer, Mars in Pisces, um, that's very, very close energy, right? And what I was saying before about the retrogrades, like, yeah, either having under or overdone the Venus thing. So it could have been like, you know, having put too much of your energy into relationships or not enough. Like judging. Oh my God, what just fell? Mika. Sorry, 1 second. What did you just break, Mika? Mika. Time out. Bad girl. What are you doing, Mika? Stop scratching. Why'd you do that, Mika? Bad. Stay in here. Bad, Mika. Probably woke up all my neighbors. She just pushed like this huge thing we hold bread in. She pushed it off the counter. Made like a huge noise. My girlfriend's like trying to sleep, but she has to wake up in 2 hours, take the train. Um, troublemaking. See, that's Uranus energy. That's Sun in Aries conjunct Uranus. Oh my God. So defiant. But yeah. So judging by your South Node being in the first house, you're trying, you know, maybe there wasn't, I would say that maybe there wasn't enough self-love karmically, and that's something that you're really trying to work on this lifetime, because Venus is conjunct Chiron. So, and the fact that, okay, so now I'm seeing the parallel, right? The fact that your North Node is in the 7th house in Pisces is that you're meant to have very healing relationships in this lifetime. And at the same time, they'll bring pain, but you're learning a lot when it comes to your relationships. And sometimes the lesson ends up just being that, you know, it sounds so cheesy to say, but that you cannot be happy with anyone. And people have a tendency to create, you know, God out of their relationships, right? But like, yeah, like I was saying, in your case, it could be something where there were internal messages, you know, like I was saying, maybe like feeling something, you know, something, and I'm just spitballing, right? But like, you know, some kind of internal message, like I'm more focused on myself, you know, because I don't believe, like I said, there could be some past life pains, right? So those will come back up in this lifetime. And, you know, mixing Pisces with 7th house Libra, it's like through the deepening of your spiritual self, right? The more awareness you can bring, the more you can learn to really value you and get past some of these, you know, some of that, you know, mercurial pain, right? Get into your emotions, right? Really feel into in the essence of all that is, right? The connection to the divine, and also service, right? Being of service really, really helps that. And Virgo is very much about service too. Um, that's a Virgo and Pisces, the axis of service, you know? It's one of the things. It's axis of it's yeah, many things, but service is a big commonality of that axis. So, you know, like feeling worthy, right, is a big thing. And you know, Venus opposite Saturn is really difficult. But Venus opposite Uranus. So I said, you know, like with the love language of Venus and Cancer, a lot of times it is a lot of closeness. A lot, you know, there's love for family, and also in the 11th house, it makes someone who a lot of times what I see is making their friends their family. You know, wanting like friendships that are like very emotionally close, and also like yeah, makes one very ambitious. It's good for money too. In the sense that 11th house is it's good for like being able to benefit through like the connections you have, and join groups that have like an emotional bonding and stuff like that, common cause, right? um but like the thing with the Uranus opposition is that there can be like this big drive to get into these relationships, but then and it kind of goes with like the Gemini energy, right, where one can get bored easily, and there's like a big need for freedom in relationships, right? When you have that opposition, it's the exact opposition. And so commitment can be difficult, right? Grass is green on the other side, and that can come from sometimes one of the downfalls of Virgo, South in Black Moon Lilith also like is overly idealistic and searching too much for perfection in love. And then when it's not there, or when everyone's human, no one's perfect, right? Sometimes people with that aspect can just like feel kind of caged up and like they want to like when that pink cloud kind of ends, like feeling disillusioned. And Venus is opposite Neptune. It's not, it's like like nearly a 10-degree orb, so it's not but like that is potential for like, it's not going to be that strong of influence compared to Saturn and Uranus, but it could be like rose colored glasses in love, and it could kind of emphasize like just giving up too easily potentially, right? So it's all about like having that appreciation for your own and others, like kind of unique beings, right? And talents, and just like the real values, right? So with Saturn, right? With Saturn, it's definitely a lot of times there's like a lot of difficulty with expressing oneself, right? Um, and a lot of times it comes from having a parent that was very, very critical. And it goes back to that whole thing of that Chiron wound, of having like an inherent message that your way of thinking or something around that was flawed, right? And it can lead to like isolation and communication issues. Um, but there's a big need to kind of like stand up for your own beliefs, right? So I see this a lot. I see a lot of Mercury square up, Mercury opposite Saturn. And you know it definitely is of like, Saturn is memory, Mercury's intelligence, so bringing them together. And you know it it is really good for intelligence, actually. And you have Mercury in Gemini, which is like the indignity placement of Mercury, so it's a very fast mind, very good for intelligence, right? Very fast thinker and all that. But this issue can be just with like emotional connection with other people, and just really needing to work on communication skills and those like limiting beliefs potentially, right? But it's another one where there can be like issues with like the attention span, and feeling like misunderstood and misinterpreted and stuff like that. So yeah, and also like it can speak to like kind of negative um you know communication. uh but like I said, like this Saturn is any Saturn hard aspect, it gets easier after Saturn return. um but it's really important to have a sense of humor, right? And to not be too serious in life, right? um so yeah, I think that the effect that Saturn hard aspects on Mercury can have is that, yeah, it can make people sometimes see like the glass is half empty, and kind of like analyzing things too much, being over analytical. And that's the Virgo moon thing too. So it really comes a lot from the early conditioning and kind of going back and undoing a lot of that, right? Like that real conscious effort. So whether it's like positive affirmations, and just real mindfulness around the thought, right? But yeah, a lot of times when I talk to people with that, it's they kind of isolate themselves or whatever, like when they're growing up, a lot of times they didn't have um you know as many social opportunities. But with Venus in the 11th though, that's interesting because that actually is very good for popularity, right? And very good for attracting friends. So kind of curious how that plays out. And you know and yeah, so it's just really important to, as a Venus in Cancer likes to have these very close emotional bonds, right? the Saturn, the Saturn can kind of make that difficult for the first 30 years or so, or until like all that work is really done. So, yeah, the fact that, well, I'll go there after fifth house, but okay. So then with Mars, being on the descendant, that can be like a real push, which is in line with your North Node, right? Towards relationships and towards partnerships. And it can, and it's opposite moon. So, in the T-square, right, with Mars opposite moon and the sun's at the apex, and it shoots off at Sagittarius, fourth house, around the part of fortune. But moon opposite Mars can be like a struggle to kind of express oneself assertively, and there can be conflicts that come, right? Because oppositions can lead to those, right? And there can be like lots of arguments and disputes and stuff like that. And it's really important to have like a creative outlet, right? And that's shown by your Neptune, Uranus in the fifth house. But the fact that Saturn's in the fifth house too can make it so it can feel like there can be like a creative block that comes up, or a block around um, fun and the inner child, right? So of course it's very important for fifth house Saturn to take a creative risk on themselves, even if it feels uncomfortable, to just dive in that water. Because with Neptune and Uranus there, that gives you the ability to really communicate through, or not communicate, to really create through your intuition, to have these amazing, you know, Uranus fifth house is very, very much about, you know, usually people with that, they have like kind of more unconventional hobbies and creative pursuits. But the fact they're in the fifth house, and fifth house in, from a romantic perspective, represents like kind of like the early meeting stage. Mika just scratched my door so much I had to let her out. It's just really important, like in any kind of relationship, to really, take things slow at the start. Because, the fifth house Neptune, it gives, it's very, very creative. It gives that very strong artistic nature. So, just being able to lean into that and find, one or several creative outlets is huge. And then that also hits your North Node in Pisces in a positive way. So back to the seventh, there, like, I can imagine with everything I'm reading so far, that the, Mars on Mars setting is what it's called. That can make someone really, really have this big pull towards relationships, right? And it tends to make someone quite competitive. It's a strong Mars on an angle. Lots of athletes will have that. So, usually it is good in terms of like being able to like attract a partner. But with a lot of these other things, the communication can be a little bit difficult, right? And Mars in seventh house, it can lead to different like quarrels and kind of this energy, this kind of like fiery energy that comes out in relationships. So relationships can kind of end as quickly as they started sometimes. Very passionate, very competitive. So it's important to have someone that, can kind of, and to be able to have like very non-violent, what's that book? Nonviolent communication. That's such an amazing book. To be able to really have that kind of communication, right? And you really just learn through experience, right? And once again, there needs to be a way to get that energy out. Because seventh house Mars, a lot of times the anger can be kind of thrown onto the partner. So yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Even like a kind of like a martial art would be really good for, because like martial arts have like that Pisces like kind of spiritual component also, and they kind of, you know, can burn some of that energy. Even though there's no fire in the chart, that's a great way to add fire, right? To find new passions, to just throw yourself in things. And to, just find things that, are fun and that kind of light your fire. But it's more of a challenge to the person that lacks fire to find those. Another thing with Mars and Pisces is that there can be some frustration around, because Mars likes to be in signs like Aries, right? Um, so Mars in Pisces, sometimes there can be, it is really good for having this like strong drive towards like a spiritual path. And it's very, very intuitive also, right? But sometimes there can be like, playing victim, and just um, you know, having difficulty, yeah, like being like expressing boundaries, and really just like let's say you get angry or something, there can be like, it can be difficult to just like be assertive and be like, look, this is what's bothering me, like let's talk this through. um Sometimes it can kind of show up is like, yeah, passive aggression, stuff like that. No, Mika, you're not sitting with me right now after what you did. Bad, Mika. Stop trying to play with my heart, Mika. You're very cute, but not right now, Mika. um but yeah, like at the end of the day, like the North Node journey is all about, compassion. It's all about faith, right? As Virgo kind of rigidly builds structures, and you know these structures in this kind of like very consensus reality kind of material world energy, it can really block the understanding of, of that oneness with the universe, so like I said, no, Mika, say hi. It can just, it's just really like a call for you in this lifetime to get really in tune with the intuition. um so Juno being with the sun in Gemini, it just speaks to like, also kind of the ideal partner being someone who, can keep you on your toes, and where there's like that real intellectual connection and really solid communication with, right? um Someone, no, like obviously like the foundations have to be, the emotional foundations have to be solid with the Venus in Cancer and Mars in Pisces. But you know um Juno in Gemini is definitely linked to variety, stimulation, right? Exchange of ideas, similar interests. It doesn't mean they have to be exactly the same, but at least someone that's not kind of, because you're on this spiritual journey, right? So um the worst thing could be someone that completely rejects that part of you, that side of you, right? So at least, some level of curiosity and acceptance. Apologies. Apologies. Um, so yeah, but with the T square, right? With the fact that, Mars versus, Mars is square the sun, that can make someone, um like, things can really boil up, and with the moon and the sun in hard aspect to the Mars, it can just be frustrating. So like it just goes back to like knowing the difference between assertiveness and aggression, and um yeah, I mean, it's just very interesting, kind of like all of the different variables here, because with the Mars being in Pisces, there can be stuff, it's just important not to hold things in, and it just always goes back to the healthy outlets. Then we say, okay, where does the T square shoot out? well, it shoots out. I'll go back to so the T square, right? Moon square sun. Also, moon square sun people, like it's really important to know that um that your mission and your path is not meant to be like your parents. Like you're really people with that. I swear, like my last like so many readings have had like a sun opposite moon. I think I had 4 yesterday that had that. Um, and then like everyone lately has been like, you know, sun square moon, sun opposite moon. But it's really important to understand that you are on your own path and that it's very independent of your parents. And it's kind of like the hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. Let's see. So yeah, the fact that boom boom shoots out right on the part of fortune in Sag. So part of fortune is like your flow state. So fourth house part of fortune in Sag is saying that you are at your flow state, kind of like at your really really at your best when you are one having this deep kind of spiritual relationship with yourself, um this real internal kind of like this ability to cats keep pushing things over, this real ability to be introspective and to have some alone time, and at the same time, Sagittarius is about truth, right? And you have your Jupiter in beautifully placed in Taurus in the ninth house. So people with that, they're always, like for example, traveling and experiencing different cultures. That's something that would have tremendous benefits. Different cultures, different worldviews, different philosophical views, all that. And the more that you expand your inner and your inner truth, like your inner relationship with yourself and with the universe, your kind of your spirituality, we would say, and the more that you expand through new learning and stuff like that, increasing your worldview, your overall level of awareness, the more you grow, right? The more you start to see, like even from a reading like this, you start to see like, or just understanding astrology in general, you start to see, okay, wow, like these aspects to my Venus, to my Mercury, like the fact that they're, from, that they have a karmic element to them, like that's massive. Because we could even say that I use pretty wide orbs for the nodes, as far as the node. So, with Venus, there's unresolved material from past lives to, in respect to how one relates to themselves, right? And then therefore how they relate to others, right? And it can be like, a lot of isolation, um, or, just like this excessive social activity, right? That can lead to like and this is kind of what I sense more, like a loss of spiritual identity, right? The South Node in Virgo in the first, loss of spiritual identity, and you're here in this lifetime to find that, right? Um, and yeah, like a lot of times there is like this kind of transference of one's own unresolved issues onto partners and friends, and it really really reflects kind of like the inner work that you do translating to relationship success. So yeah, um So in a chart like that, it's just all, it's all about, like being able to be alone and being happy with being alone. And just real deep kind of like self-acceptance and self-love. It's not that you're, like people, when I see these things, it's like it's not that you're meant to be alone. No, your North Node's in the seventh, you're meant to have these very karmic and life-changing relationships, but being okay, not requiring that is key. Um, yeah, allergy medication. So weird that I'm getting like my allergies are like acting up at night. Eyes are getting puffy. Anyways, so let me just stare at the chart. Yeah, I think like, the more that you can be of service, the more, like that's the surefire way to really, really feel connected, And the midheaven being in the ninth, whenever I see that, I think that the individual, would want their dharma, or like, I don't like to say career, but like their kind of outer life, right? And with Al Ghul, there's a real it's very alchemical. It's very, it's very transformational. Of course, Al Ghul can be looked at as like a very difficult star, but it's also like it's high stakes, Um, so it's very, very transformational. And I think that, you know, having like your life purpose that really relies around using what you've learned and you're learning to benefit others is really amazing. And ninth house midheaven, I always think that the goal is to, to increase your worldview, right? Like which is the resolution of that T square through, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And vertex in the sixth in Aquarius, it's like the doorway to higher awareness is through, humanitarianism and through service. And through solid health, and also not, you know, like I think that there can be certain health issues that could come up if you were overworking yourself in the wrong way, right? Um, and then yeah, even Palace in Aquarius, I love that because it's just like this real forward thinking, like different type of perspective. And go back to this. Yeah, it's very forward thinking, and it definitely in the sixth, it kind of speaks to that Virgo energy because it gives like a very good approach to everyday life, very intelligent approach to everyday life when it comes to organizing and all that. Um, and yeah, just really being able to grasp ideas very quickly. I mean, Mercury is in Gemini and Pallas is in Aquarius, So maybe there's people early on in your life that were jealous of your intelligence. But like what I was gonna say before was that when I see these types of squares to the nodes, I think that it's just like your family of origin, like your kind of like who you grew up with, all that. There's this it's really, really meant to reflect your karma and to push you to make these big shifts, because that's like a huge shift, node, like from South Node Virgo to North Node in Pisces. Learning to trust others, right? Learning to Yeah. So it could be like one relationship in your life, or maybe more than one, but like one really, really incredible relationship that just changes everything, right? And even with Pluto in the third, another way to look at that is that there can be power struggles with siblings. I don't know if you have siblings, but I definitely know of like people with third house Plutos who have like very intense, um, kind of dramatic, volcanic relationships with siblings, right? Um, like power struggles. Like I said, it does make someone a very powerful, you know, researcher, communicator, someone who you know wants, who in this lifetime, because maybe in past lives they believe something to be true without doing the proper investigation. In this life, it's like you have to go and do and find, be the journalist and find everything for yourself. So where's Vesta? 12th, right? Yeah, 12th in Leo. So I see a lot of my clients have 12th house Vesta because it gives that real commitment to the spiritual path, um, and real dedication to kind of that Pisces North Node energy, and Vesta and Leo. I think Vesta and Leo people in terms of work, they like to work. I'd say it's more entrepreneurial. Um, they like to be kind of left to their own devices and really take pride in what they do and like to have fun with what they do. Kind of linking, and that's what I see a lot of times with a fifth house Capricorn. I always notice that it's like people who are able to turn their play into their work, right? So the oh yeah, and Sirius is right by the North Node in Pisces, so seventh house. Sirius, I think of it, it's kind of like a second moon, but it's not like obviously it's important, but it does kind of, so it's in an opposite sign as your moon, so it just speaks to really, really feeling, when you do feel that kind of oneness, that real deep spirituality, that's when you really feel nurtured, by deep spirituality and by deep oneness with all that is. And um, when you have people who are being very compassionate to you, and when you're being very compassionate with others, because ultimately, even though there's all these tough aspects, right, in the seventh with Mars there is this desire to have like very soothing and like spirit, like relationships that lead to lots of spiritual growth. um uh, what just spell that. So, and yeah, seventh house series is just like really wanting that fairness in relationships, that really like that real you know good and take, like good and take, give and take, that real kind of balance. But Sirius seventh house, sometimes there's a need to like, I don't see that in your chart though. No, actually, you never know with the retrograde Venus, but sometimes there can be like codependency potentials. But the North Node is in the seventh house, so it's like, it really is. It's asking you to make the compromises for relationships, but to not put everything into those. But I think a lot of it is being, really feeling worthy, and um, yeah, really, really like the more internal stuff is more than anything else. Um, because like, you know, like I can even think of friends I have who, I have a friend who's super codependent, and she, um, like it's almost like an addiction, like actually like it kind of ruined our friendship because she is completely codependent, and it's the same thing as like, I'm not saying this is you, by the way, I'm just saying like, um it's a drug. It's the same thing as being friends with someone who is addicted to alcohol, and who, when they drink, just changes a shit ton, and just becomes like a, all their values go away and all their morals and stuff like that. um so I think that, like, yeah, like a big thing is like healing through relationships, and but like like really like it's all an internal thing, and then that gets, yeah, as I said before. Okay, let's pull these babies up. You good. Claritin, even though I don't like taking them. I tried so hard this year to like um not take it, Claritin, but yeah. Okay, wow, you have Urania on the IC. So that's interesting because you're studying astrology, and that is the asteroid. There's not that many asteroids that I follow. I'm way more into the fixed stars. Um, but Urania is definitely one. Like I have it on my midheaven. A lot of astrologer friends I have Urania in their chart. So yeah, you have it on an angle. So that's definitely something. It could even be like some past life energy, and something that really, really kind of comes naturally. So, and that can really also be very, very positive for kind of the internal stuff, internal growth. You have FOMO hot right on the descendant, right? And how far is so Algol is 1 degree from the midheaven, and then what's that? Let me just pull this up actually. Where's Zosma? So I also have FOMO hot on my descendant. Come to think of it. So it just gives like amazing creative powers, and it's good for wealth and wealth, in around like the Middle Ages or through marriage. Um and it's one of the four royal stars. So, it's very, very good. And it's it represents like divine inspiration and creativity, right? So it's Archangel Gabriel. So there's lots of wisdom there that one takes with the full Mohat. It's very humanitarian. Um, yeah, it's like high Pisces energy. Um, so obviously Algol gets a bad rep. It's Medusa's head. Goes to the whole, but it's very linked to artists, right? So people that work with like the mass media. Um, and on the midheaven, which I have that too, just like you. There can be a certain like mystique that this person has publicly, like something there's usually something very striking about like the algal kind of mysterious, and people are drawn to them, but sometimes people don't know why they're drawn to them. And I'm talking to like let's say you're on social media, let's say you're an astrologer, you're doing like something like what I'm doing, right, where you're making like content. There's like this. I'm not saying this is how people feel to me. I'm just saying this is like what I see with algal midheaven. Um, it's just like this very interesting kind of ability to really, really, you know, be like a game changer for the public. And it's way better on the midheaven than on the ascendant. So yeah, and they tend to get like a lot of attention, just because there's something that just stands out about them. So now I want to see 0, 24, 2. And 2. And then 3. No. So then none there. 17, that's what I was looking for. Nope, none. None on the 7, none on the moon. Oh yeah, 0. Get a bit on my ankle. Yeah. So yeah, not too many pick stars. So yeah. All right, that is everything. I think this is my longest reading in a minute. A tough one to figure out. Wow, 100 minutes. Yeah, lots going on in this chart. So you have a follow-up already, and I have 2 other readings for you. So hope you enjoyed, and yeah. So I'll tell you in the future, or like in the coming readings, about the how it usually works. People tend to want to do the follow-up and the current astrology at the same time. It becomes like one session. But yeah, I think you'll have 2 follow-ups, right? Or 3 actually. So well, actually I need to check. Yeah. Yeah. So you have 3 follows. So um cool. Cool, cool. And also like, okay, so you know, um from the psychology perspective, I think yeah, the whole idea of introjection and self-limiting beliefs is just is massive in a chart like this. And um, also just different, I guess, different energy that's taken on that's not yours. And then yeah, I'll be curious to hear about the whole romantic stuff, like the whole like potential for the codependency, but not necessarily there because of the South Node. So yeah, lots of themes here. Very interested to hear. So yeah, people tend to watch these a couple of times. Taking notes is very good because it adds that reflection. I know the Virgo moons, I don't even have to tell them more than to tell them to do it because they'll do it. But to really, really get the maximum, it's like about, I've done this knowing nothing about you, um, and then seeing how your free will kind of um, you know, affected the potentials in the nail chart. All right. Thank you so much. Talk to you later. Ciao.